If there's one person we can all thank for helping to end the cash payment systems at congested toll plazas, it's Saudara Syahrunizam Samsuddin. The former CEO of TnGo was instrumental in persuading stakeholders to adopt a cashless toll payment system. Today, he is the CEO of UEM Edgenta. A strong believer in achieving the right balance between spiritual, emotional and physical well-being, Syahrunizam believes this helps create a heightened sense of self-fulfillment and achievement. Together, let's explore and learn more about this inspiring Malaysian leader. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day everyone. Thank you once again for joining us on Cuba Cerita for yet another exciting episode where we hope that you can draw inspiration from all the guests that we host on this show. Today, we have yet another inspiring leader from the Malaysian corporate scene. Before I mention his name, but you may know or not him as a person. But if there's one thing that you're going to learn through this episode, which is going to be very important to you in terms of your memory, he's the guy behind TnGo. Good or bad? I'll let you know later. Please join me in welcoming Saudara Syahrunizam Samsuddin.
Thank you, Coach Azman, for having me here today.
Apa khabar?
Suara pun hilang dah. Khabar baik. Thank you for having me on
Terus
Cuba
sebut pasal
Cerita.
TnGo. Have I got myself in the wrong seat
Exactly.
today?
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for joining. I know you've just come back from the UK on a program. You just sort of settling back in, and Chinese New Year is around the corner also. So, but thank you for making time today.
My pleasure.
And I know that you have been an ardent fan of our podcast series. Again, it's about how do we understand our leaders better. And you've achieved a lot, alhamdulillah, in your career. You've got a lot of accolades to talk about. But what we'd really like to learn about you a bit more today is who is it in Nizam Samsuddin? Okay. So I'm going to quote it a bit.
Well, thanks for the question. I don't know how to begin answering the question. But, let me begin by saying that I live in a household that was very much civil service household. You know, my father was a civil servant. I was raised in discipline. Yeah, and I think when you are raised in that sort of environment and your parents want the best for you, you always look out to a greater objective for yourself. So part of me is wanting to continue the legacy that my father has left behind, even though I'm not in government, but I do want to contribute in my own way in corporate Malaysia. But at the same time, also more importantly, in the last 20 odd years in corporate, I also realized that our time is a lot different from his time and I guess the past. And therefore, the nurturing of talent, the development of skill sets, the way the world has evolved also requires a different Nizam in a way. Right, one that will adapt to the modern surroundings, but more importantly, becoming relevant to the talent pool that we have today. So I think the old Nizam was that, follow a certain construct, have a framework, make sure that I don't embarrass my parents, make sure I work hard, right? The new Nizam is also about that, but also more about what else can I do? What am I not doing today for the future generation that is important for them now?
Wow, very noble.
But I don't say it out loud, except this may be the first time I'm saying it out loud, but it's
yeah.
actually something that is in my DNA that, okay, have I not done enough?
So you came from, a family, many siblings?
I have one brother and one sister. Yeah.
And you are
I'm the eldest.
Oh, you are the eldest.
I'm the eldest.
Right, and of course, father is Tan Sri Sam.
That's right.
Samsudin, yeah, who was obviously a very prominent leader, ketua Setiausaha Negara, and again, as a person, as a leader, he was very, how do I say, very eloquent in his ways. I remember him while he was in service. Was there ever any pressure for you to also maybe join PTD or be part of the public service?
No, he never pressured me that way. I think he always wanted me to excel in whatever I did.
Okay.
But funnily enough, during my childhood, because he was so strict, I usually would rebel against whatever he suggested for me to do. So only at the later stage, I told him that because my father told me, I wanted you to do this, you did something else. I want to do this. So I think generally he realized that my left side of the brain was more dominant. But at the same time, I think he wanted the best for us.
Okay.
Right. So he never pressured me in that way. But he always wanted to make sure that we did things right.
Okay. So was he an old boy of Malay College like you are?
No, he's an old boy of RMC, which is also a part of the reason why I kept on rebelling with him. It's a funny story because in Standard 6, when I was doing the assessment to go into RMC,
Okay.
I was trying to find different excuses why I shouldn't be accepted. Obviously, as an ex-boy, it was easy for him to push me through, or at least, but I had to take the assessment.
Okay.
It's not that the assessment was hard. I mean, there was a physical part and there was a examination part, like an IQ test. But I refused to put any thought to the IQ test. So they gave us booklets, and the booklets already had answers that were already rubbed out. All the answers that was rubbed out are all wrong. So I just followed that. And I completely failed
so you could decipher
the entrance exam lah. Yeah, exactly. So in fact, when I read it, I said, "Whoa, Nizam, you really look dumb in this assessment, right?" So I think when he was informed that I failed the assessment, he just couldn't believe it lah. But subsequently to that, when I was selected to join Malay College in Form 4 and I wanted to go, he was really upset.
Oh, so it's Form 4 lah.
So I entered Form 4. So I went to Sultan Abdul Samad PJ Boys School, Section 17.
Okay.
Section 16. And so he told me, Nizam, I'll send you to Kuala Kangsar and that'll be it.
Pick you up a few years later.
So, but my brother eventually joined RMC. So one part of us went to RMC.
So you're the alumni of RMC as well as Malay College lah.
Correct. I'm the only one out lah.
You're the only one out. Okay, all right. Well, that's fantastic. And this is so not going into civil service or so was by choice.
Correct.
And one thing, it comes out in the biography of you in our podcast, but you've been across industry. In fact, for the longest time that I've known you, you've been, in a way, I would refer to as politely as a jack of all trades, kan? But in reflection now, Nizam, in your formative years, where you were making your own decisions and, in a way, charting your own career, kan? Is there anything in reflection that sort of like, oh, now I see how is it I ended up doing so many different things in my career?
Well, I think, I was a scholar of Petronas, so of course, as a returning scholar, I would have to serve my 10-year bond, and I did that happily. I thought Petronas was a great organization to start my career. But like most things in those days, people like to ring fence you. If you came back with an engineering degree, then obviously they will want to put you in an engineering job. If you came back with a legal degree, they had the same thinking, and again, in other fields. But when I came back, I had both accounting and law, and at the time when Tan Sri Nordin interviewed me, he wasn't sure where would be my best placement because everybody had a position at that time. And he asked me, where would I see myself? The usual question in 5 years. And I told him that I would start up a new company for Petronas. And then he laughed at me. He said, Zam, kat Petronas tak boleh buat macam ni. You kena cakap lah, I jadi manager kat department ni ke. But I already had in my mind that I would do something creative and different, right? So in the end, when all my friends were placed into departments, I wasn't placed. I was put into a pool of executives, and that pool of executives was assigned to corporate planning. So when I was in corporate planning, I basically did everything, from corporate reporting to corporate finance, to strategy. Basically, I was the runner lah. I did everything, right?
Yeah.
And that opened my eyes to the world of business at a very early stage. And then from that point, it was no turning back. My bosses would use me for different aspects of work. I was involved in the post-merger integration work with Engine. I was involved in a lot of new things that the Petronas wanted to do at that time, culminating in me starting the first IT company in Petronas, which is iPerintis. And in fact, when Tan Sri Hassan, who was the CEO then, was looking at me and asking me to do this project, it was the first time that he had assigned a junior officer to lead a project of this magnitude, because at that time in 1999 there was a .com boom.
Yes.
And credit to him and the management then, they had the foresight that a younger group of people needed to lead this, to to find a way to see how Petronas would circumnavigate the IT boom in the year 2000, which is not much different to where we see now. The only difference is that technology is moving a lot more rapidly than it did before. But business-wise, concept, business model lebih kurang je.
But kudos to you, because iPerintis exists till today. It may have taken another form and shape over the years, but technically it's still serving its initial purpose.
Correct.
So in those days, I mean, fair enough. Particularly Tan Sri Hassan American, he was a very foresighted type of person and willing to do things beyond what the norm was. But you were just like handpicked from this corporate strategy group. Was it you and someone else, right?
I was under corporate planning development division. So
Yeah.
my boss back then was Puan Mariam, and then after that, immediately I was serving now Dato' Arif dah, recently retired Dato' Arif.
Yeah.
And Dato' Hamzah Bakar was the senior
My
vice president
goodness, Hamzah Bakar,
of corporate planning.
Yeah.
But because I was so eager and passionate about solving corporate issues, they thought it was a natural thing that I would look at something like this. And in fact, BCG was assigned to work with me to develop the strategy. And which we presented to the board of Petronas. At that time, we had a Petronas retirement benefit fund, similar to an EPF structure, but now it's already dimansuhkan. But and basically, I put on a proposal for the retirement benefit fund to invest in us, and then we at the management will also co-invest a small equity stake.
So I understand.
That was the first part of the equation, and we had two very, I guess, difficult management committee sessions. I mean, thinking about it, I was 28, 29.
Kan?
I had to present to the highest level of Petronas.
In Petronas lagi.
And I had to build relationships and rapport with a lot of the board members and senior management. And they worked with me because I was running around doing senior management forum. I helped them. I learned. So all of them knew who I was and what kind of person.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, before the final decision was made, Tan Sri was saying, dia kata, Nizam, you know, I would like a unanimous agreement that we would do this, because I don't want anyone to disagree, right? And you've already presented. What else do you need to present? Because when the second round, Tan Sri kata, is there anything else you want to present? So I brought out the book, A Vision Realized, which was recently launched at the year 2000 about Petronas.
Yes.
Right? And I was thinking to myself, this is a group of people that was the beneficiaries of the old management of Petronas that has built it to a Fortune 500 company. So I thought it'll be apt for me to read a quote from the book.
Wow.
From Tengku Razali. And then Tan Sri was looking at me, dia kata, hang jangan buat main ni, apa nak baca buku pula ni? No, Tan Sri, please, if I can just quote something from this book kan. So anyway, Arwah Dato' Ali was there, and he mentioned, never mind lah, Tan Sri, he's one of our few flamboyant executives, let him. So I said, Tengku Razali said that if the management of Petronas did not have the foresight that this will be the national custodian of oil and gas under the Petroleum Development Act, we would only be relegated into a tax collector. Petronas is where it is today because we had the vision that it would be more than just a custodian. Right? So I told the management committee with Tan Sri that who am I as a Petronas staff not being able to pitch this to the management of Petronas who sits on this Fortune 500 board to not allow me to do this.
Wow.
Because this is for the future. Right?
Very good.
And I think everybody was gobsmacked by my statement,
sure.
because and then, you know, Arwah Dato' Ali was funny. He was looking at me, alah Tan Sri, dia nak buat duit, Tan Sri, dia nak jadi entrepreneur ni kan. Tapi I cakap, you know, but there was a bit of silence because they didn't realize that, you know, and that created the impact. After that, Tan Sri kata, okay, dah. Okay, but I think most of them were taken aback by that. And I until today, Azman, that I really thought The Vision Realized was one of my first defining corporate books that really touched me. Because it is what Malaysia is about. When you talk about DNA of nation builders, those were nation builders.
Yes.
They built the DNA for people like me to be where I am today.
And there was only a handful of them that really just carved out, you know, Alhamdulillah,
Correct.
dengan rezeki kita kan, what it is today kan.
Correct.
If not more.
So to me, that's,
Yeah.
I think Petronas did a fine job. And that's why when people ask me, kalau toreh darah I keluar hijau lah, because I still in my mind, my formative years were trained by Petronas because of this value system that they had.
But you moved on after that. You
I
left,
did.
In fact, you left the industry. It's not as if
did.
you stayed on within the industry, maybe directly or indirectly. So it's been Scomi and MTN, to name a few. And I've known you all these years. Um, Apologize if I'm wrong, but you always seem to have been thrown off the deep end, Nizam.
Yeah. And and I guess it's also on my own doing lah. I think when I left Petronas, it was a difficult decision because in fact Tanshi asked me, "You can stay, Nizam. We want you to stay." And I said I need to see the world. Part of it is that I realized then that a lot of the work in corporate Malaysia requires me to understand how everybody else is doing business and how they interact. It's not just about what you know, it's about who you know also. And not so much to use that as a leverage, but to understand how you fit in, right? So all these different companies thereafter from Petronas taught me that actually what you know without who you know and understanding the way decisions are made is very, very important in shaping your career, because in order for you to set your bearing that you want to stay in your true north, that you want to create something meritocracy, based on merit, you want to create something that is good, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of convincing. It takes a lot of, I guess, discussion, because in the end, you have to serve a particular interest one way or the other.
Okay.
And it's hard to stay in your true north. So for the last 20 years, it has been about me trying to build upon the mandate that was given to me by the boards of these companies, but at the same time trying to stay clear of my, very focused on my true north. Why am I here, right?
How do you, I mean, maybe in a bit more simple, like, how do you know that you are staying to your true north? That you are not going to be swayed into doing something that, for the moment it sounds good, but in the long run it's going to be something that's going to be maybe something that I regret.
Good question, and I guess making mistakes is one way of learning. And although these days mistakes are shunned upon, but I think mistakes are probably the best teachers. But I think most importantly, corporate leaders who don't do enough in executing what they want to do from a strategic point of view will never be able to either fail or learn enough to be able to know that their true north is being impacted. Because you only talk about it, or you want to build friendship that actually serves a particular purpose, but someone else is down there trying to figure it out. So when you're not vested in your own decision making, you are easily going to be swayed. It depends on who talks to you, when they talk to you, and what interest they want to actually have from you. And this is the difference. So execution is actually the single most important part of trying to build that skill set where, if I agree on this direction and my board agrees and I do it and I fail, there's only one person that's accountable for that. And from there on, you realize that, okay, did I fail because I didn't do enough preparation? Did I fail because I didn't study the landscape enough? Or did I fail because I didn't build enough network to make this work? All this has value connotations in every part of the question. From there, you will know, actually, maybe I didn't do this properly. Maybe I should have done this instead. So every part of my career taught me a big lesson about me in my decision making.
Wow, then that's a very good reflection. I'm not sure whether you can share, but don't worry about the details. But is there a particular point in time, in reflection, where if you were to do it over again, that you would maybe approach it differently? Can you share maybe one example?
Well, I mean, when I was in Scomi, maybe that's a good example.
Okay.
I mean, the shareholders, the management were very ambitious about building Scomi into a global oil and gas and engineering company, right? We grew very fast, and I went from head of strategy to CFO. At that time, the CFO had to was recovering from cancer, and I had to take over. But when you are fueled by growth and ambition, you tend to put blinkers on risk management. You tend to put blinkers on, country risk, counterparty risk. How do you actually manage the cash flows and supply chain effectively across markets is very difficult. Tax regime. There's so many different variables, right? And so we were. I mean, I hate to use this word, but sometimes we were a bit cowboy in the way we approached the business, right? And I was young, and all of them also were young. So when you're young and you put your heads together, everything is possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those days, you throw anything into the stock market will also go,
Okay.
And And we had maybe a realization a year before the Asian financial crisis that we should maybe slow down a little bit, but we didn't. And I say we collectively, all of us,
Yeah
right?
lah.
We didn't. And eventually, when the financial crisis hit us, I mean, it dragged the carpet from our feet, literally, because there were, a lot of pressures from the banks.
course.
There were also issues that we had in markets like Venezuela. Chavez wanted to nationalize some of our assets. So there was a lot of other issues, right?
Yeah.
So I think that taught me that doing business globally, requires more than just a Malaysian mindset. It requires a global mindset.
Kan?
And I guess we were not prepared, at least in the management side. And I eventually led Scomi Engineering that we should have been better prepared to deal with that. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but I'm just
Kan?
saying that at that time,
Yeah.
we were driven more by ambition than by data analytics, if you like,
Yeah.
in that sense, right?
But again, maybe talking to an audience today of, say, up and coming leaders, neither do we want to douse the fire that they may have in terms of aspirations, kan? It's just that as much as possible, we learn from what didn't go according to plan and hopefully be better prepared, but certainly don't hold back, lah, kan?
Correct.
And I'm sure now you are the MD of your company and you're working globally also. You wouldn't want your team, fair enough, do whatever is right to be safe and proper, but certainly don't douse your ambitions.
And that's the biggest challenge for leaders today. How do you remain enthusiastic and passionate about making sure that you do the same as what you had experienced in the past to your younger generation, without necessarily wavering on values, wavering on principles, right? And I must say, and credit to the shareholders at that time for Scomi, to take a bet on a young person to lead a strategy and eventually lead one of their subsidiaries, a listed subsidiary at that time. I mean, I was shy. I was maybe about 37, 38 at that time. I was young, right? I don't think in this present age it would be so easy for someone to do that, right? But I think in those days they gave a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But of course that freedom came with a cost, right?
And confidence too.
Also confidence.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think the cost was that you have to own up to your own mistakes.
Yeah.
You have to be responsible. So I learned all that at a very young age. In retrospect, of course, now when I see leaders in Edgenta, for example, and we all make mistakes, and I think when they make mistakes, some of them are more senior than me, but they don't realize that the exposure that I had in the past had already allowed me to understand how they would deal with the issues that they have now to move forward, right?
Yeah.
So this is part of the sharing that I have to do
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
how do you circumnavigate these things.
Yeah.
Kan?
But then again, the environment today is so different. We always say that. Maybe our fathers said that about their time versus our time, which is why I think, in Cuba Cerita, isn't so much as about what we did in the past, what worked, what didn't work, but what were our thoughts at that time? What is it that, and maybe sometimes in reflection, we actually, it's okay, as you say, 2020 is always easy, but to actually be reflective, so that hopefully someone going through this same process at this stage of their career may have the same type of reflections, but in advance learning from what we're hearing today.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. You like to move across industry, and of course, eventually it did lead to Touch and Go before Edgenta, for example. But so, are you the type of leader who, every now and then, gets an itch to try and do something different, or is it what exactly motivates you?
Usually I don't move any sooner than 3 years lah. But I think it just so happened that there was some form of inertia, and I think before I joined Touch and Go, I was basically doing my own thing, and then the CEO was now Yang Berhormat Tengku Zafrul.
Yes.
He came to see me and say, "Hey, can you please stop in your retirement mode? We need you to consider maybe coming back to corporate and turning things around at Touch and Go." At that time, CIMB wanted someone transformational, and I have no finance background, or I have never worked in a bank. So I went for my interview, and then eventually I had a session with Tan Sri Nazir Razak lah. And of course, I think in his mind, like, what would make me different in terms of executing some of the things that I needed to do for Touch and Go. Aside from the business part, I think one part that I think was somewhat convinced was my ability to engage with stakeholders, in particular circumnavigating government and making sure that people understood how to see our strategy long term and all that. And I told him everything else I'll work out because I learned very fast. So he took a bet on me. I mean, essentially, kudos to him and Zafrul, both of them took a bet on me, right? And so my foray into TnGo was really the start of my foray in going back into corporate Malaysia again. I was somewhat disillusioned after Scomi because I wanted to find out whether, there was a lot of things that I needed to learn or I lacked during that time. And, so when I came back, I was a lot more mature and a lot different in terms of how I approach things.
And of course, I'll always remember the times that you were in TnGo because it was at that particular point of time where congestion was just to the max at our toll plazas. TnGo had been a service for years. The mindset of the average Malaysian who would frequent toll plazas every day was still, I don't mind paying cash instead of pumping money into a card and not showing whether it will ever fulfill its full amount. And one day, the government made a decision to totally do away with cash payment at the toll plaza. And I said, whew, Nizam. Boleh awak lah. And again, but kudos to you. I mean, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but I have to say this to the audience. So, if there's one person who helped to do that, it is actually you. So tell me, as a leader, as someone who has been tasked a role, how many percent really falls on stakeholder management and influencing?
At that point in time, before the cashless policy came out, probably about 60%. But I had a bigger role. I had to rebuild the confidence and reputation of an ailing financial payments company that was hit by different things. They had a branding issue, they had consumer issues. But more importantly, there was internal, not unrest, but they were demotivated. When you get complaints over and over again and you don't know how to solve them, you get demoralized. So the most important part about this whole thing at the base of it was to make sure that my team regains their confidence. Right? And to do that, I needed to chart a path for them to see what we needed to do in sequence. Right? Not 5 years big picture, but okay, I have 10 things I need to do. Let's do this first. Right? So one was that we had to address our ability to respond to customer complaints.
Okay.
And when we analyzed the data, and I also went through this whole data analytics regime with my team, 70% of the complaints that came to us were 100% within our control to address. Point number one. Point number two, almost 80% of it was process-driven.
Process-driven?
Process-driven. That means somewhere within my process, it created a lag to service the client, either in terms of transferring monies into their card or not repair a particular smart tag. It was a process issue. And I told them the only way to eliminate a process issue is to either improve it with technology or eliminate it completely.
Eliminate the process?
The process completely. And so they looked at me, boss, but we've been doing this for the last 20 years. But I said, the card is not going to survive all of us. It is going to change. Right? So what I did to them was to tell them that, look, first, we must convince the government to go cashless so that when people do more online transactions, we create less opportunity for the process to be physically managed by a person. We create more digital processes that we can monitor, and the data comes back to us for us to act. So this digital transformation from data to action was the first part that we needed to solve. But it took me 2 years to put out a policy paper to discuss with all the toll concessionaires, and I must say I had to work with all the toll concessionaires to make this happen. And all of us had to then go to see the government. So it was a long process. That's why a lot of people in KKR and also at LLM, they remember me fondly because I never gave up. Right? And part of the reason why we wanted to reduce the cash handling at the toll gates, because it led to a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Handling of cash.
Yeah.
And also there was security issues.
Yeah.
Right? And so there was also reconciliation issue. Macam-macam lah.
Yeah lah.
So kalau kita nak kena unbundle satu-satu ni, we won't have enough time a day.
Kan.
And I didn't want to grow my already 800 team in TnGo to be 2,000 just because we're going to grow that part, right? So I think the first part is to transform data into action for the people to see. Second part is to start rethinking what's the future. And I told them the future is actually having a digital wallet. At that time, it was something like, what does that mean? I said, we need to build an e-wallet. Okay, and the e-wallet basically allows people to pay from their mobile phones. Right? Now, we need to find a way for the card and the wallet to coexist until such time the consumer themselves make a choice which one they want. We don't force it. Right? So that part was the biggest challenge for me because I had to convince the bank, I had to convince the stakeholders, and then I needed to find the technology. So there was 3 variables here, right? So whilst that was happening, the last piece was, I said, we need to change our approach to market, our branding. Who are we about? What are we?
Dah lama pula tu kan?
Dah lama. I needed to convince Bank Negara about how our role at the toll is not necessarily in alignment with the way the banks operate, because we are like a disruptor that has already existed for a long time.
Kan?
And the fact is, a card doesn't keep data very well. It has very limited space to keep data. The only way to keep data is to have an online platform like what we have in the e-wallet in order for us to service the client, right? So I started brainstorming with my team what the future would look like from a customer point of view. So we said, boss, if I was a customer TnGo, I don't want to wait a single minute to get my refund. If there is any problem at the toll, I want my refund in within 1 hour. Done. 1 hour response time. Credit via e-wallet. I just listed all the things I wanted as a consumer. And then when I went to the tech team, how do we build a system? I want a system that will answer to all these problems. Right? So that was the part where they jam because they kata kat Malaysia tak ada orang buat ni bos.
Kan?
Right? So when I came in, we already had started a discussion with Celcom at that time. They were also thinking of building Boost. That was an early day. So I'm telling you a lot of this story because this one people don't see. So Boost was initially talking to us, but eventually it didn't work out for many reasons. And then I went to the board and said that, will you allow me a few more months for me to work out whether we can work on a technology that's far more scalable, that will allow us, one, banking APIs that will allow us to create more stickiness for the customer to use TnGo beyond just toll in other financial aspect. Two is also to create a platform for them to be more loyal to us because they like the service, not because they have to force to use it. So it becomes an option, right? So Datuk Zainal Abidin Putih, Datuk Zab, as we fondly call him, was our chairman, and of course he's a board member of Khazanah now, and he's like, Zam, who are you talking about? I said, well, I need to talk to either Alipay or WeChat. And then he looks at me, do you know any of them from China? No, I don't, but I need 3 months. I'll work it out. And then he looks at me, are you sure, Zam? I said, no. I said, Datuk, I'll work it out with my team. I'll figure out how to get in touch with them. And of course, with CIMB team, we both worked both channels. But eventually, I sent an email to Alipay. And this is the beauty of people talk about the stars being aligned. But I talk about, Allah wills things when you have put in the effort with a collective group of people with similar values.
And this is Jack Ma.
So I wrote an email to Alipay stating that I'm so-and-so from TnGo, and it is my pleasure to work with you because I want to build a wallet.
So this is literally how it's done.
I sent an email from the Alipay website straight into their website, and it was responded 1 month after that by the country head of Singapore and Malaysia. Greta Gunawan, and Greta came to see me, and we started talking, and of course all that became history and now we moved on with the e-wallet. But Eric Jing, who is the current chairman of Alipay, used to say to his team that we were 2 weeks too late to respond to Nizam at the time when he wrote to us, right? Because you imagine, no one actually expected someone like me to offer that, to do a partnership through a general email.
Kan? I mean, sometimes we think, these are deals which are G to G and then introduce company to company, and
so
MOUs.
To be true honest, I don't know anyone in China. I didn't know anyone in Alipay or Hangzhou. I mean, like,
but that's how it was done.
And the only reason I went through that route is because I just couldn't give up, and I didn't want to fail my board and my shareholders. And at that time, that was the very thing that Alipay saw as the very DNA that would be aligned with them. Like someone like me who was randomly wanting to work with them, found a way to make it work.
To connect first.
Correct. But of course, after that, there was a lot of other issues,
technology,
blah, blah, blah,
but I mean, making that first step. I'm listening to all this, Nizam. And I'm trying to imagine, how do you make sure your team can keep up with you? I mean, with all due respect, I know, okay, because I've started to chat with you and ideas just flow. As a leader, as a orang kata apa, the abangs lah to the how do you, are you like the guy who sketches out stuff, or are you like you have to use language? Because you number one, you speak fast and you're very visionary. Sorry lah, I got to ask a question. How does your team keep up with you?
Well, the answer is some of them don't, right? I mean, to be honest,
Most of them don't. You gotta agree.
but I guess a lot of them have got it, because otherwise I wouldn't have achieved half the things I've achieved.
Yeah.
All of them was due to them, right? I think dulu my formula was sketch things out, tell them how I think they should be doing it. It was very prescriptive.
Okay.
Right? When I went to Touch and Go and I started dealing with issues that were a lot more complex, not just engineering, but just people issues were a lot more complex.
Right.
I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I cannot be prescriptive all the time.
Yeah.
And so what I needed to channel my energy on was, one, to motivate the right kind of people within my team to find a way to figure out how to solve the problem. Two, facilitating them to be part of an engagement model where they are not just talking to the people they're comfortable in talking, but talking to people who they're not comfortable in talking, to give them the confidence they can do it. And I did a lot of that. That's why you see, even in Edgenta right now, I surround myself with younger people, because what I want them to do is have this no fear attitude. Not no respect, no fear.
No fear.
So no fear doesn't mean no respect. No fear means that I have to prepare myself adequately in order for me to engage. But maybe I have to try 10 times before I get that one shot. And I think in that process, what I find is that out of 100 people that I work with, if 20 get it, I will achieve more than 70% of my target.
Yeah.
Because this 20 has a remarkable network effect on the teams that they manage. Because they will actually be more empowering to their teams. And this empowerment, kadang-kadang as leaders, you forget. You ingat you empower. Sebenarnya, yang empower is the people down the line. Tapi you kena start with the ones that you can see. But dia tak boleh cakap, oh, I empower you to take over my DL. Tak boleh. But dia takut. Dia kata, alamak bos, nanti kan kalau silap buat decision, nanti ada repercussion. The idea is to give him confidence that when he makes that decision, he knows why he's doing it, and he feels good about doing it. You know what I mean? Dia tak ada rasa macam takut, you know.
Give them the confidence.
That's right. And that takes time.
Yeah lah.
That takes time, right? And that takes also, you need to take some punches. That's why I always tell the younger people, it's not about tough love. It's about the love that you need in order for you to love other people in the process of you becoming boss. Because if you don't experience what that love feels like, you cannot give that love to somebody else.
Kan?
So that means you cannot tell someone to do something that you are yourself not comfortable in doing.
Yeah.
It is, to me, aku kata, macam natural law of things kan. You kata, oh, you have to do this. Tapi dia tengok cakap, bos pernah buat ke? Macam nak buat ni kan? I mean, kadang-kadang you can see it from their face. They may not say the words.
Yeah.
Kan? So, but so this is the relationship you must build lah, especially with the younger generation, because they need to be convinced, betul ke ni? Ada data ke nak tunjuk? Sekarang ni semua tengok data kan? So
everything has to be proven, yeah.
So I think this empowering fact, or this empowerment actually must happen down the line, right? Right up to the people yang kat bawah tau.
Kan?
So this is the part where when at that time Minister of KKR was Datuk Sri Fadilah, Yang Amat Berhormat Deputy Prime Minister now, he asked me, dia kata, Nizam, are you sure this RFID system works? I said, ILLM will do an audit, ask them to see the people who put in the sticker. Of course there will be one or two yang misplaced, but generally tak ada masalah. Kan? So that's why the feedback is ground up, not top down. Kau customer cakap,
Kan.
okay tak okay kan?
Kan? Ultimately, they are the ones who are going to make, especially today in social media and all kind of anything. But so hopefully, as a nation, as the rakyat, we one day will have what they call this multi-lane free flow. I know there's a combination of technology and willpower and money, of course. But hopefully, of course, that's behind you now.
Yeah, I mean it is, but I'm secretly watching that. I hope that this will happen sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah.
One, because consumers in Malaysia are very road savvy. We like to drive.
Yes.
So the highways are going to be seeing increased volumes even after COVID. Like say Plus, for example, has gone up 110, 120% in volume. So which means it's only inevitable that they want the services supporting such a highway system. So I think it's bound to happen. The only issue I have in all these things that we talk about is that someone needs to be brave enough
Kan?
to, that means put an idea satu. Kedua, kalau tak jadi because of certain issue, don't kill the whole baby lah. You know, go to the market or the public and say, look, this one kita minta maaf, ada kekilafan, kita akan buat balik, kita akan buat betul balik, and then continue. Because you know, we always underestimate one thing. Our consumers IQ tinggi.
Of course.
So kalau consumers kita IQ tinggi, tak payahlah kita nak buat cerita macam-macam. Sometimes it's better to spend 5 minutes telling the truth than 2 hours telling all sorts of nonsense. That really doesn't make sense.
And they'll quote you for that.
You know what I mean? No?
Yeah.
So sometimes memang it's tough to tell the truth out loud. Tapi it's easier kan?
Yeah.
Actually we screwed up.
Yeah.
Awak tak cakap awal. Okay, lepas ni kita akan buat macam ni kan. But you know, and we had, I tell you for the TnGo e-wallet, we had a list of 1,000 screw-ups that we had to now
own up to.
dia tu kat bangunan I dekat UAE tu, sebelah tu ada 7-Eleven kan. Ada one time I went jogging and then I was waiting in line and then this auntie was paying with TnGo e-wallet kan. I'm so happy lah, this TnGo got e-wallet now. So easy to use. My son put money in my account every month. I can just go and buy things. You know, it makes me feel nice to hear that, you know, that they can actually do it. But of course, in between, the whole team had to go and solve so many problems, right?
To get there kan.
But to me, that is what Malaysia needs to go through to evolve.
Yeah.
We can't run away from it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and of course, Edgenta was another calling. I mean, this is the other part. When you were first appointed to UEM Edgenta, with all due respect, fine, good leader and all that, but I was trying to also decipher the connection from TnGo, an environment to facilities and an asset management company. Of course, now you've expanded even more so overseas. If there was one thing that you didn't realize was going to happen when you moved to Edgenta, what would it be?
Didn't realize what was going to happen. Oh, I guess let me answer this question this way. When I went in, the mandate for me was, one, to digitalize, which was within my sort of, and two was to find a way to globalize, to find new markets for Edgenta, right?
Okay.
Which then brought me to the days of Scomi, when I was very much focused on international expansion and projects, right? So Edgenta was like a calling because it sort of grouped everything I learned in the last 18, 20 years to say, okay, I'm ready now to shape something that's a little bit different, right? One is to bring a lot more digital vigor into the organization. Two is also to say, hey, we are already in some markets. Why can't we build on that? Yeah, be more, right? And at that time, I went in at the first month of lockdowns. I think we were in lockdown. I joined in June 2020.
Yes.
Right? So we were in the first year of our serious lockdowns. And there were two challenges for me. One was, how do I keep an organization of 23,000 people and 6,000 in Malaysia motivated to know that the new boss understands what they're going through? Right? I mean, aside from all the team calls and Zoom calls, but that was a very real challenge. Right? I needed to figure out, like, how do I do this, right? Two was that we were very much part of the government's action to address COVID at the hospitals that we manage.
Oh, yes.
So the people who were involved in that, particularly in Perak, Kedah, Perlis, Penang, they were under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Because they were scared to work because of COVID.
Yes.
They didn't want to impact their livelihoods, their own livelihoods and that of their families. Two, we were under a tremendous pressure because there were a lot of cases and a lot of deaths associated to the cases. As we went through the full year of 2022, it just kept on creeping up, right? And the hospitals were just inundated. Now, the board was really squarely looking at me and said, how do you deal with this? So first I said, one, we needed to build a rapid response to government in supporting them in doing it. We cannot back down. I said, forget about being a GLC or listed company. As a Malaysian, if I'm able to support the government during COVID, I should be standing right up front. Now, what does support mean? Support means motivating my people so that they know that we'll try to keep them safe and their families safe while they're doing their work, i.e. give them peace of mind. I cover you this, I cover you that, don't worry, we'll take care of everything, right? Second part is, I check out, apa government betul-betul nak at this point in time, because macam ada one problem we had was ICU units tak cukup, ICU dekat hospital tak cukup. So we work with a local vendor to create a prefabricated ICU called hybrid ICU, which can be constructed in 23 days, and we deployed almost 18 of these across the country.
Wow.
This is how, when we work an engineering solution and I work with my team, it's all about how do we be in the front line supporting the government. And of course, government was very, very happy with us in that sense, right? But the third part was that they also wanted something more digital. Like how do we feed data to them?
Faster and all that. Yeah.
So for example, all the hospitals we had to give daily data feed, live feed on the amount of beds that are available from COVID. Sebab kita kena turn around the beds.
Yeah.
The linen has to be clean, sanitized, put back into the hospitals, and then the number will go up. So this number was a live number. And at that time, YBKJ was, the then YBKJ was in charge of that whole task force. So one, we had to digitalize very fast. Two, data had to go to MOH as soon as it's received so that they can take action. Three, kita kena make sure that hospital yang kita jaga tu kita boleh address on ground problem. For example, tak cukup ICU ke, oxygen tank ke. So my guys had to be creative and innovative at that point.
So this was literally crisis management at
For 2
its
years.
max for,
For
2
2
years. Uncertain circumstances.
For 2 years.
Which I think really excites you, Nizam.
Okay, so actually I know.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know. This is what I wanted.
I initially I was scared. Then after that, I said, no, I got to figure this out. But then I was telling my team that hey, we cannot just sit by the wayside and watch them do their work. So I started visiting all of them. Right? Masa time tu kena minta permit kan?
Yeah.
Kita permit kan nak jumpa semua mesti. But this was the funny part. So so okay lah, my team minta permission polis semua kan, nak pergi travel semua kan. So sampai kat up north, polisnya checkpoint banyak. So kita selalu kena stop.
And they saw you. This is the same guy.
Kan? So I was with Arman, and then he said, and then polis ni kelakar. Dia kata, "Cik, apa tujuan cik datang ke Sungai Petani?" Tapi dalam hati aku nak tergelak. Sungai Petani ni bukan Paris tau. So but at that time he had to ask the question. Tak cakap kena ada kerja kat hospital. So okay.
Saya doktor.
So but it was interesting because I was telling Arman, dia cakap Sungai Petani pun kena buat kan. But anyway, but it was important to show strength in unity by being on the ground. Because kalau tidak, there were times when they didn't want to go to work. A lot of our workers at one point were just calling in sick.
Exactly. And everyone was so uncertain and afraid. Okay. Again, I know that would excite you. There's another part of you which I find exciting also, Nizam, is that you prescribe to this balance. Okay, spiritual, health, mental well-being. Again, don't mean to embarrass you, but I know that you are one of those guys like this, trying to maintain your youth. What, maybe share with us if you can, and why is it important to you about this balance that you're a Fujitsu exponent. you try to run the marathon, trying. What is it about you that you feel this is important, especially as advice to young leaders?
I think one is that let's not wait till you're older to keep your mind active. Part of the reason of keeping your mind active, and look what you're doing now with Cuba Cerita is really part of that, right?
Yep.
You have, and I think Tun Mahathir says it best. Dia kata, if you don't commit your mind to reading and writing, there's nothing that will be retained, and therefore you cannot keep your body active, right? So part of it is that if I go into new sports, it's not just for mental health, it's also for physical, but also to make sure that I understand what I'm getting myself into.
Okay.
Right? So whether it was marathon or Ironman and now Jiu-Jitsu, it's an evolution of the way I want to think and I want to feel. But most importantly for young leaders, kalau everything is about work, and I keep telling my guys, all this doesn't matter. I said, what do you mean, boss? The work that you do, it doesn't matter. What matters is your family.
Yes.
You. Right? Because if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of anyone else. Forget about anyone else. You got to take care of you and take care of your family. This is what matters. Right? If you understand that value system and you leave it to God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and say that, look, this ecosystem I want to build so that I become a better person, then you must take something as a hobby. Doesn't matter if it's sports or you want to do something creative, right? I mean, I can tell you this week, and Arman always gets a headache, aside from sports, right, which I have to dedicate specific time for jiu-jitsu and boxing, but I also do Arabic classes at night. I also do Quranic classes at night. And then weekends, I have to catch up on my reading. So essentially, right, outside of work, it's also full.
Yeah.
It's not like, I mean, there's time for me to hang
Yeah.
out with my friends
Yeah.
and all that, but it's becoming less and less.
Right.
Because to be a good corporate leader, you need to be a good human being also.
Kan.
And I think if you don't think that a relationship between being good human and good corporate leader is intertwined, I think you should take a reflection, and go for a break and really figure out
Yeah.
these things, right? Because I feel that being a good human means you have to experience life, right?
And Alhamdulillah, Allah has given you the strength, the wisdom, and also the humbleness lah. Nizam,
Alhamdulillah. I mean,
to be
as
able.
much as I can.
I think that's your parents' upbringing and how you've carried yourself. Okay. We're going to maybe the audience we can hear is a bit of rumbling of thunder in the background. So I hope that's not testimony whether you're saying the right thing or not. But we're going to kacau you sikit with a few
Okay.
questions before we end.
Sure.
You being a Malay college boy, so again, I'm gonna randomly ask questions. You can reply yes or no,
Okay,
true or false,
sure,
or give me so okay. First of all, are you a health drink? Are you like a protein shake person, or are you someone who
No.
just takes whatever comes along?
No, I eat whatever I want to eat.
Okay, and diet as much as you want to diet.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Tell me now, you were in Malay college.
Yes.
You only entered in Form 4.
Yes.
Can you remember the name of your first bunkmate?
My first bunkmate. Okay. Next to me was my Zul.
No, your bunkmate. You're literally your bunkmate.
My bunkmate, huh? Because we didn't have a bunk bed at that time. I was
Oh.
on my own.
I see.
I was on my own. So on my right was Maizul, and then
Okay.
on my left was Nirwan No. In front of
Okay.
me was Zafrul and Junaidi.
Zafrul as in our FM2?
Yeah, FM2 was in the same dorm. We were in
As a
Dom
now,
7.
I
Dom
see.
7, Malay College, Idris
Okay.
House. Yeah.
Oh, nice. What annoys you the most?
Not being able to do the things I want. That annoys me a lot.
Okay. Looking back on your time, your history, your career, kan? What if you were not doing what you were doing today? What profession do you think you would be in?
Well, I was actually secretly wanting to be a fashion designer.
Serious?
Yeah, I mean, I was very good with creative stuff, so I was thinking about it. But then, as as now I'm going into it, right? I'm telling my daughter-in-law that I might take up law again and maybe practice after I retire from corporate. So, the thing is that I like solving problems. One, two is I like to be creative, and generally, one of those things are going to be with me during my retirement, whenever that is, lah.
But you play music, right?
No, I didn't play music. But generally, I'm good about looking at material. I understand how people like to dress and all that. So I'm good with brands. So I generally thought, maybe I should do this, lah. But I never really gave it a second thought because I was so busy with corporate career. But yeah.
Okay. Haven't talked much about family. What's the date of your anniversary?
30th December.
And this year is how many years have you been married?
This year will be my 29th.
29th
year.
29th year.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And I understand, of course, you've got you've got a daughter-in-law now.
Correct.
So inshallah tak lama lagi hope for cucu.
Yeah, inshallah. I mean, of course, she keeps telling me, Daddy, you can't pressure me. I said, no, I'm not pressuring. I'm just asking. Yeah, but you can't ask every week. I said, no, I'm not asking every week. So I'm like, so now I'm sending messages to my wife. Okay, like let's chill. Let's. But anyway, but kids these days they wanna, granted they wanna look at their careers and all that. So it's fine. No problems.
Nizam, I think our conversations on our last will go on for hours and hours. It's been a real pleasure, bro, having you. And
Thank you for having me,
I
Azman.
know
Really.
you've been so busy, and we really had to schedule this time to have you. But I really appreciate it. And who knows, there'll be an opportunity to really bring you back one day when maybe we'll dive deep into one particular subject,
No,
which
it's
is
fine.
really,
It's fine.
So again, thank you so much, for joining us today. Alhamdulillah, I hope you found it as fulfilling, and there's just so much that we can learn from within whatever sort of the Nizam shared that hopefully will resonate with you, and please learn from this and bring it with you, and hopefully will benefit you in your own careers. So thank you once again for joining us. Till our next episode, we look forward to having you again. Salam sejahtera, Assalamualaikum from all of us at Cubus Victor. Have a good week ahead.